Today is Epiphany Sunday. The Epiphany was really on the 6th of January, but the bishops of the United States decided to switch it to the Sunday. And so today we have Epiphany Sunday. We had the Magi who were there studying the stars. They were there, those court astrologers, those who were looking for the stars and tried to determine the world's future by looking at the stars. And in doing so, they saw the star for the King of the Jews. And so they decided to go and to leave everything and to go search for the king. So it'd be one thing, in faith if they walked a mile or, 10 miles, but hundreds of miles they came. And even though they're called kings, they're really more court astrologers. There are also three, but they're really, in the gospel story, there really isn't a number given to them, assigned to them. The three is based on their gifts that they gave. It's also that people were given names based on the ethnicities, the major ethnicities of the world. And so it was that they were coming from all parts of the world to come and to see the newborn king. But again, in the gospel story, not necessarily so. So in following the star, they come close. But when they deviate from the star and they come to Jerusalem, because after all, it would seem reasonable that the newborn king of the Jews would be where the temple is. It would be where the worship is. But yet the newborn king was not in Jerusalem. And so Herod was mighty disturbed at the Magi coming. And when we think about Herod, he was considered to be the king of the Jews. That was the title that he had. But he was not particularly liked. He did some things that were good, like brought about the treasuries of the government during a time of famine. He also greatly enlarged the temple and started the building program of the temple. But he was also incredibly jealous. He was also not going to be taken to anyone who considered themselves to be king. And so he was willing to kill even his own family members, his wife and his sons, because he saw them as rivals to himself. And so when you have the Magi coming for the newborn king of the Jews, no matter that the child is a toddler, no matter the child is a small infant, it doesn't matter to Herod. He's not going to take any competition. And so he was greatly disturbed, and Jerusalem itself was disturbed. So much so that, the Magi went hundreds of miles. They certainly could have gone just a few miles, and yet they didn't. It would be similar to today if the Magi had come to North Korea. Certainly the people would have been disturbed and the king would have been disturbed. And so better not go, better not to get into, better to remain in kind of the graces of King Herod than to try to find the newborn king and to go out with the Magi. And so the Magi left, and based on the information that they received that it was going to be in Jerusalem from the prophets. And sure enough, the star led them there. And then in coming to them, they offered their gifts of gold for the king, frankincense for the priest, and myrrh for his burial. And so, having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they returned to their country by another way. And so really, in having that experience of worship, that experience of coming to see the newborn king, they were quite different. And even if they had gone back to King Herod, and King Herod had been a wonderful guy and very accepting, they would have come away very different. And so coming back to their country by another way is a beautiful way of saying that they were indeed changed by the experience of seeing the newborn king of the Jews. And so what it does for us, this Epiphany, is one, There's a couple of things. One is that it gives us that idea that coming to the Lord in experience, coming to the Lord in seeing the Lord in the Eucharist, coming to the Lord in adoration, coming to the Lord in worship, that we are indeed changed slowly, maybe imperceptibly, maybe changed drastically, but there is that change in us. The other thing that it helps us to see is that even the Gentiles were there to worship the newborn King. And so even we can see, even from the beginning of time, of his coming and birth, that first by the shepherds and then by the Magi, that all peoples will come to worship the true King, Jesus Christ as Lord. Thanks, and God bless.